Let's give a bit of an intro for this chapter 28. Job maintained that the dispensations of providence were regulated by the highest wisdom. To confirm this, he showed of what a great deal of knowledge and wealth men may make themselves masters. Truly, one of the most oft overlooked proofs of God is the capabilities of mankind and what we have achieved. No other creature that we know of has went to the moon, let's say, or set something down on Mars, and has such a broad knowledge of their surroundings. And what I mean is the universe itself, but also physics, chemistry, just all of these really amazing capabilities of man are true proofs of God, I think. Surely there is a vein for the silver and a place for gold where they find it or refine it. And the subject right here is that of miners and how they would go into the earth, and they still do, go into the earth and dig out these precious stones, minerals, metals. Iron is taken out of the earth, and brass is molten out of the stone. He setteth an end to darkness, and searcheth out all perfection, the stones of darkness and the shadow of death. The flood breaketh out from the inhabitant. Now, once again, the topic is still miners and how they would strike a certain location and water would come out. Even the waters forgotten of the foot, they are dried up. They are gone away from men. As for the earth, out of it cometh bread, and under it turned up as it were fire. The stones of it are the place of sapphires, and it hath dust of gold. Charles Ellicott commented at this point, while the plowman and the reaper till and gather the fruits of the earth on its surface, the miner far below maintains perpetual fires, as also does the volcanic mountain, with its fields and vineyards, luxuriant and fertile on its sides. There is a path which no fowl knoweth, and which the vulture's eye hath not seen. The lion's whelps have not trodden it, nor the fierce lion passed by it. He putteth forth his hand upon the rock. He overturneth the mountains by the roots. Charles Ellicott commented, so ingenious is man that he discovereth a place of which the stones are sapphires and the very dust gold, and a path that no bird of prey knoweth, and which the falcon's eye hath not seen. Even an atheist came up to me once, many years ago, and we would go back and forth in our debates on religion. And he came up to me and said, I will tell you one thing. Mankind does appear to be so much more advanced than every other beast on the earth. But at the moment, Job, he's pointing out and trying to get across this lesson of, yes, man has all these capabilities, but where did this wisdom come from? He cutteth out rivers among the rocks, and his eye seeth every precious thing. He bindeth the floods from overflowing, and the thing that is hid bringeth he forth to light. But where shall wisdom be found? And where is the place of understanding? Man knoweth not the price thereof, of wisdom. Neither is it found in the land of the living. The depth saith, it is not in me, and the sea saith, it is not with me. It cannot be gotten for gold, neither shall silver be weighed for the price thereof. Matthew Henry commented, Job here speaks of wisdom and understanding. Its worth is infinitely more than all the riches in this world. It is a gift of the Holy Ghost, which cannot be bought with money. Let that which is most precious in God's account, like wisdom and understanding, be so in ours. It cannot be valued with the gold of Ophir, with the precious onyx or the sapphire. The gold and the crystal cannot equal it, and the exchange of it shall not be for jewels of fine gold. No mention shall be made of coral or of pearls, for the price of wisdom is above rubies. The topaz of Ethiopia shall not equal it, neither shall it be valued with pure gold. Whence then cometh wisdom? And where is the place of understanding? Seeing it is hid from the eyes of all living, and kept close from the fowls of the air. Destruction and death say, we have heard the fame thereof with our ears. God understandeth the way thereof, and he knoweth the place thereof. For he looketh to the ends of the earth, and seeth under the whole heaven. You see, my friends, God only understands what true wisdom is. It is a part of his being, an essential element of his nature. He knows the way of it. In essence, how it works and manifests itself, and he knows the place of it. In essence, where it dwells, what limits it has, if any, and how far it is communicable to any beside himself. The highest knowledge is all hid with God, my friends. And except so far as God imparts it to him, man can know nothing of it. I often tell people one of the great proofs of being one of his children is that you understand the scripture. Because without God, no man can understand the ancient wisdom to be found within the Bible. And unto man he said, Behold, the fear of the Lord, that is wisdom, and to depart from evil is understanding. You can tell that Solomon read the book of Job probably quite a bit, as did his father David, as there are so many similarities between these books. So basically, the fear of the Lord keeps us from evil, and thereby we please God, and we are more blessed and protected and prosperous, even if you will, on this earth. It appears as though Job pauses for a reply right here. None being made, he proceeds to illustrate the mysteriousness of God's dealings as set forth by his own case. Chapter 29, Moreover, Job continued his parable and said, Oh, that I were as in months past, and in the days when God preserved me, when his candle shined upon my head, and when by his light I walked through darkness, as I was in the days of my youth, when the secret of God was upon my tabernacle, when the Almighty was yet with me, when my children were about me. Naturally, the first element in Job's happiness in those past days was the presence of his children. When I washed my steps with butter, and the rock poured me out rivers of oil. The second, though a less, element of his happiness was his overflowing abundance. When I went out to the gate through the city, when I prepared my seat in the street. The third and chiefest element of his past happiness was the respect of men and the joy of connection with them. This is the main subject of this chapter. The young men saw me and hid themselves out of respect. And the aged arose and stood up. The princes refrained talking and laid their hand on their mouth. They didn't speak until Job spake. The nobles held their peace, and their tongue cleaved to the roof of their mouth. When the ear heard me, then it blessed me. And when the eye saw me, it gave witness to me. They would pray to God to bless him, and pronounced a blessing upon me because of the integrity, justice, and wisdom which were observed in all my discourses and actions, and of the satisfaction which I gave to all. Because I delivered the poor that cried, and the fatherless, or the orphans, and him that had none to help him. And what an absolute contrast to that in which Job has been accused of by his friends. They say, you oppressed the poor, and the people hated you, and you took their money. And Job, he says, I did nothing of the kind. The blessing of him that was ready to perish came upon me, and I caused the widow's heart to sing for joy. I put on righteousness, and it clothed me. My judgment was as a robe and a diadem. I was eyes to the blind, and feet was I to the lame. And of course, this is a much smaller scale, Old Testament foreshadowing of that in which Christ would do on a far greater scale in the New. I was a father to the poor, and the cause which I knew not I searched out. And I brake the jaws of the wicked, and plucked the spoil out of his teeth. Then I said, I shall die in my nest, and I shall multiply my days as the sand. My root was spread out by the waters, and the dew lay all night upon my branch. My glory was fresh in me, and my bow was renewed in my hand, meaning like a bow and arrow, a symbol of strength. Unto me men gave ear, and waited, and kept silence at my counsel. After my words they spake not again, and my speech dropped upon them. And they waited for me as for the rain, and they opened their mouth wide as for the latter rain. If I laughed on them, they believed it not, and the light of my counsel they cast not down. I love this. I got such a kick out of reading this because it shows Job is just a normal fella, just an all-around good dude. He wasn't one of these men in whom had his servants carry his robe behind him and all of this. He didn't do any of that. No, he would come up and notice what it says right here. If I laughed on them, they believed it not, meaning if I laughed with them. If I was in their company and I joked around with them and, and made merry with them, they couldn't believe it. They were like, oh, well, this man, because he's called the greatest of the East. Job, even kings admired Job. I chose out their way and sat chief and dwelt as a king in the army, as one that comforteth the mourners. Chapter 30. Now, before we get into the final chapter of this week's study, let's give an intro by Benson. Job, having in the foregoing chapter described the honor of his former condition, goes on here in chapter 30 by way of contrast to describe the vileness of his present state. They that are younger than I have me in derision, whose fathers I would have disdained to have set with the dogs of my flock. He says, I wouldn't have even paid your fathers. They were so sorry and useless and evil. Now their children, who are probably more wicked than them, are laughing at Job. Yea, whereto might the strength of their hands profit me, in whom old age was perished? For want and famine they were solitary, fleeing into the wilderness in former time, desolate and waste. These cut up mallows by the bushes, and juniper roots for their meat. They were driven forth from among men. They cried after them, as after a thief, to dwell in the cliffs of the valleys, and the caves of the earth, and in the rocks. Quite the telling statement, as most scholars believe that Job, he lived in the land of Edom, south of Israel, and these were known for living in the cliffs, troglodytes and such. Among the bushes they brayed. Under the nettles they were gathered together. They were children of fools, yea, children of base men. They were viler than the earth. And now am I their song, yea, I am their byword, or proverb. They abhor me, they flee far from me, and spare not to spit in my face, which they did also to Christ, another foreshadowing, because he hath loosed my cord, because the Lord has loosened the cord of his bow, taken away his strength, and afflicted me. They have also let loose the bridle before me, meaning that they're unhinged. They have no bridle, there's no holding them back. Upon my right hand rise the youth. They push away my feet, as if to trip up. It's a tripping motion. And they raise up against me the ways of their destruction. They mar my path. They set forward my calamity. They have no helper. They came upon me as a wide breaking in of waters. In the desolation they rolled themselves upon me like a flood. Terrors are turned upon me. They pursued my soul as the wind, and my welfare passeth away as a cloud. Notice also how it says they had no helper with them. That means that they were shunned by everyone. And yet, even those in whom feared others, they vexed Job. And now my soul is poured out upon me. The days of affliction have taken hold upon me. My bones are pierced in me in the night season, and my sinews take no rest, meaning that at night is whenever his body hurts the worst, probably because of the cold. By the great force of my disease is my garment changed. Now that because of his disease, his clothing is changed upon him. It bindeth me about as the collar of my coat. Now this is very descriptive and very sad. The purulent discharge from his ulcers disfigured and made filthy his garment, which stiffened as the discharge dried and clung to his frame. He hath cast me into the mire, and I am become like dust and ashes. I cry unto thee, and thou dost not hear me. I stand up, and thou regardest me not. Thou art become cruel to me. With thy strong hand thou opposest thyself against me. Job complains a great deal here. Harboring hard thoughts of God was the sin which did at this time most easily beset Job. When inward temptations join with outward calamities, the soul is hurried as in a tempest and is filled with confusion. Job is it's so emotional at this moment. Thou liftest me up to the wind, thou causest me to ride upon it, and dissolvest my substance. For I know that thou wilt bring me to death and to the house appointed for all living. Howbeit he will not stretch out his hand to the grave, though they cry in his destruction. It's as if he had said, though I suffer here, I shall not suffer hereafter. Though he add stroke to stroke, God afflict him, so as to destroy my life, yet his displeasure shall not proceed beyond the grave. And once again, this is not God afflicting him. It's Satan in whom has come against him. Though they cry in his destruction, it says. Let's observe that one last time. Howbeit he will not stretch out his hand to the grave, meaning he'll not afflict me beyond the grave, though they cry in his destruction, and the destruction brought on them by death. That is, though most men cry out and are affrighted while they are dying, while the body is sinking into destruction, yet I desire it to be relieved. I have nothing to fear therein, since I know that my Redeemer liveth. Did not I weep for him that was in trouble? Was not my soul grieved for the poor? When I looked for good, then evil came unto me. And when I waited for light, there came darkness. My bowels boiled and rested not. The days of affliction prevented me. I went mourning without the sun. I stood up and I cried in the congregation. And what it's believed that Job is saying is, I went mourning without the sun. Rather, I go about blackened, but not by the sun, grief and suffering. I am a brother to dragons and a companion to owls, meaning that he has lived among the beast. And we don't know for how long that he lived in this state. And it's mainly because he would stay outside of the city. They didn't know if his disease was contagious or not. So he had to dwell alone in all of this. My skin is black upon me, and my bones are burned with heat. My harp also is turned to mourning, and my organ into the voice of them that weep. One final note by Cambridge. The joyous music of his former life is turned into wailing now.